The massive lunary warship blocked the stars as it approached the human outpost. Kang Taho watched it through the observation window, his coffee growing cold in his hands. He had seen alien vessels before, but nothing like this. The ship was white like bone, shaped like a crescent moon, and it moved without sound through the darkness of space. "They say the Emperor himself is on board," said Yunhana, stepping beside him. She was a xenobiologist, and her eyes were bright with curiosity. "The Lunari never leave their territory. Something big is happening." Taeho nodded but said nothing. He was an engineer, not a diplomat. Whatever the aliens wanted, it was not his concern. He finished his coffee and went back to work on the station's water recycling system. But fate had other plans for him. 3 days later, Taeho received a message ordering him to the diplomatic hall. He thought it was a mistake. He wore simple work clothes and had grease on his hands. But the message was clear, and it came from the station commander herself. When he arrived, the hall was filled with important people. Human ambassadors in fine suits stood on one side. On the other side stood the Lunari delegation. Taeho had never seen a Lunari in person before. They were tall and thin, with skin the color of pale silver. Their eyes were large and filled with soft light, like moons captured in glass. They wore flowing robes of deep purple and moved with slow, careful grace. At the center of their group stood an old Lunari male. His robes were marked with golden symbols, and a crown of crystals sat upon his head. This was Emperor Morith, ruler of the Lunari Empire. Beside him stood a female. She was younger than the others, and despite her proud posture, Taeho noticed something sad in her eyes. They were violet, like flowers that bloom in early spring, and they looked at the floor more than at the humans before her. "This is my daughter," Emperor Morath said. His voice was deep and echoed in the hall. "Princess Villani of the Lunari Empire. She is my youngest child and carries my direct bloodline." The human ambassador bowed politely. "We are honored by her presence." The Emperor's face did not change, but his voice became heavy with pain. "My people are dying. Not from war, not from disease. We simply cannot create new life anymore. Our females grow old without children. Our nurseries stand empty. In another 1,000 years, there will be no Lunari left in the galaxy." A cold silence filled the room. "Princess Villani has been bonded to 7 males of noble blood," the Emperor continued. "All unions have failed. By our laws, she is now considered defective." Villani's hands tightened at her sides, but she did not speak. Her face remained calm like a frozen lake. "Our ancient texts speak of a prophecy," said the Emperor. "They say that when our blood grows cold, we must seek the warm-blooded strangers, the ones whose hearts burn like small suns." He looked directly at the humans. "We believe this prophecy speaks of your kind." The ambassador shifted uncomfortably. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I am offering my daughter to a human male. If she conceives a child, the Lunari Empire will pledge eternal alliance with humanity. Our technology, our resources, our military strength all will be shared with your species." Whispers spread through the human side of the room. This was an incredible offer. The Lunari were ancient and powerful. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of human science. But the price was strange and uncomfortable. "Cannot force any human to accept such an arrangement," the ambassador said. "Carefully. We do not ask you to force anyone." The Emperor replied, "We ask only that you find a volunteer, someone with a good heart. Our empaths have already sensed such a person on this station." All eyes in the room slowly turned to Kang Taeho. He blinked. "Me?" The ambassador looked confused. "This man is an engineer. He has no political importance." "We do not want political importance," said the Emperor. "We want warmth, kindness, life." He stepped closer to Taeho and studied him with ancient eyes. "Our empaths sense that your spirit burns gently. You carry no cruelty, no hunger for power. You are soft." Taeho did not know if that was a compliment. Princess Villani finally looked up. Her violet eyes met his brown ones for the first time. In that moment, Taeho saw her clearly. She was not proud. She was not cold. She was tired. Tired of being examined. Tired of being found wanting. Tired of being called broken. He recognized that feeling. He had felt it many times in his own life. "I will not force this choice upon you," the Emperor said, "but I beg you to consider it. You may be the only hope for my daughter. For my entire species." The room waited in silence. Tejo thought about his simple life. He fixed machines. He ate alone. He called his mother on Earth once a month. He had no wife, no children, no great purpose. He was ordinary in every way, but looking at Villani, he saw someone who needed kindness more than she needed a prince. "I need time to think," he said. The Emperor bowed his head. "You shall have it." That night, Tejo could not sleep. He walked the station's empty corridors, trying to understand what had happened. The universe had suddenly asked him to save an entire species. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was terrifying. He found himself at the observation deck again. And he was not alone. Villani stood at the window, her silver skin glowing faintly in the starlight. She did not turn when he approached. "You do not have to accept," she said quietly. Her voice was soft like wind through leaves. "I know what they are asking is strange. I know I am. Not what you would choose." Tejo stood beside her. "Why do you say that?" "Because I am broken." The word came out like a stone she had carried for years. 7 males. 7 failures. The fault is mine. It is always mine. "Maybe it isn't," Tejo said. She turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I don't know anything about lunar biology, but I know that sometimes, when a machine doesn't work, it's not because the parts are broken. It's because they don't fit together right." "Maybe you just haven't found the right fit." Villani stared at him. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever suggested that the failure might not be hers alone. In Lunari society, the female always carried the blame. "You are strange," she said. "I know. You speak to me like I am a person, aren't you?" Her eyes widened slightly. Then, for the first time, the corners of her mouth lifted in a small smile. "I am not certain anymore. It has been a long time since anyone treated me like one." Tejo felt something warm bloom in his chest. He did not understand it. He did not try to. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll accept the arrangement. But not for politics. Not for alliances. Then why?" He looked at her and his voice was gentle. "Because you looked like you needed a friend." Villani's violet eyes, filled with something she had not felt in years. It was small and fragile. It's like the first green shoot breaking through frozen ground. It was hope. The quarters assigned to them were large and decorated with both human and Lunari designs. Purple curtains hung beside steel walls. Alien flowers sat in simple glass vases. It was a strange mix, but somehow it worked. On the first night, Villani stood in the center of the room like a statue. She waited for instructions. She waited for Tejo to tell her where to go, what to do, how to serve him. This was what she knew. This was what the 7 Lunari males before him had demanded, but Tejo only pointed to the bedroom door. "That room is yours." "I'll sleep on the couch out here." She blinked. "I do not understand. You need privacy. You need space. We're strangers." He sat down on the couch and pulled off his boots. "Get some rest. We can talk tomorrow." Villani did not move for a long time. She searched his face for lies, for hidden intentions, for the cruelty she was certain must exist beneath his kind words. But she found nothing. Only tiredness and simple honesty. She went to the bedroom and closed the door. For the first time in many years, she slept without fear. Days passed, then weeks. Tejo continued working his engineering shifts, and Villani was left alone in the quarters. At first, she did not know what to do with herself. In the Lunari Palace, her days had been scheduled by others. Every moment had purpose. Every action had meaning. Here, she had only empty hours and silence. But Tejo always came back, and he always brought something with him. One evening, he carried a small pot and several containers. "I'm going to teach you how to make kimchi jjigae," he said.
"What is that?"
"A soup from my homeland." "My mother's recipe," smiled. I'm not very good at it, but it's warm and filling. Villani watched him cut vegetables and prepare the broth. He moved without grace, spilling things and burning his fingers. But he laughed at his own mistakes instead of growing angry. When he handed her a knife and asked her to help, she felt something strange in her chest. She was useful. Not as a princess, not as a vessel for children. Just as a person helping another person cook dinner, they ate together at a small table. The soup was too spicy for her tongue, but she finished every drop. Tejo asked her about her home, about her childhood, about the things she loved. No one had ever asked such questions before. I used to write star poems, she said quietly. They are verses that follow the patterns of constellations. Each line must align with a different star. That sounds beautiful. Will you show me one? She hesitated. Her poems had been dismissed by the Lunari court as foolish distractions. But Teo's eyes were patient and curious. She closed her eyes and recited a verse. It was about loneliness, about waiting in darkness for a light that might never come. When she finished, Tejo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's the saddest and most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Villani's heart beat faster. "You truly think so?" "I don't know much about poetry, but I know when something is real." He reached across the table and touched her hand gently. "You're not broken, Villani. You're just trapped in a place that can't see how bright you are." She looked at his hand on hers. It was warm, warmer than any lunary touch she had ever known, and she did not pull away. While Villani and Tejo grew closer, Yunhana was busy in her laboratory. As a xenobiologist, she had been granted permission to study Lunari medical records. The Emperor had shared them freely, desperate for any insight that might explain his people's dying fertility. What Hannah found shocked her. She called Tejo to her lab one afternoon while Villani rested. "I've been looking at hormonal data from both species," Hannah said, pulling up charts on her screen. "Lunari conception requires specific chemical triggers. Without them, the female body cannot prepare for pregnancy. And Lunari males don't produce these triggers? Not anymore. Thousands of years ago, they did. But over generations, their bodies changed, evolved. They became more efficient in other ways. But they lost something essential." Hannah pointed at a different chart. "Human males, however, produce these exact chemicals in abundance. It's in our sweat, our breath, even our touch." Tejo stared at the data. "So Villani isn't barren." "No, she never was. Her body has been waiting for triggers that Lunari males simply cannot provide anymore." Hannah looked at him seriously. "If you do become truly intimate, there's a very high chance of conception." The weight of this information pressed down on Tejo. He had agreed to the arrangement, hoping to give Villani friendship and respect. Now, he understood that he might actually give her something far greater, a child, a future, hope for her entire species. He returned to their quarters and found Villani sitting by the window. She was watching the stars, her silver hair falling across her face. "You were gone a long time," she said. "I was talking with Hannah." He sat beside her. She found something important about Lunari biology. Villani listened as he explained. Her violet eyes grew wider with each word. When he finished, tears spilled down her silver cheeks. "All these years," she whispered. "They blamed me. They called me cursed. They made me believe I was worthless." Her voice cracked. "And it was never my fault." Tejo wrapped his arms around her. She trembled against his chest, releasing years of pain and shame. He held her and said nothing. No words could undo what had been done to her, but his warmth could begin to heal it. They stayed like that for a long time. When Villani finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. She looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. "You gave me something precious today," she said. "What?" "The truth." She reached up and touched his face. "And you gave me something else too. Every day since I arrived, you gave me kindness, respect. You treated me like I matter. You do matter," Tejo said. "No one has ever made me believe that." Her thumb traced his cheek. "You are a strange human, Kong Tejo. You have no power, no wealth, no grand title. but you have the warmest heart I have ever known." She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was hesitant at first, gentle. Two strangers learning the shape of each other. But it grew deeper as the walls between them crumbled. When they finally separated, Villani's eyes were bright. "I choose to stay," she said. "Not for the prophecy. Not for my father. Not for my people." She took his hand and pressed it to her heart. "For you." Tejo smiled and kissed her forehead. Outside the window, the stars continued their ancient dance. But inside that small room, something new was beginning. Something warm and fragile and full of promise. Neither of them knew what the future would bring. But for the first time in her life, Villani was not afraid to find out. And Tejo, the ordinary engineer with no great destiny, was starting to believe that perhaps he had been waiting for her. 3 months had passed since Villani chose to stay. 3 months of quiet mornings and gentle nights. 3 months of learning each other's languages, each other's habits, each other's hearts. But one morning, Villani woke up feeling wrong. Her stomach turned violently, and she barely reached the bathroom before being sick. Tejo was at her side in an instant, holding her hair back, pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. "This has never happened before," she gasped between waves of nausea. "Lunari, do not get ill this way." "I'm calling Hana," Tejo said. Hadash-na arrived within the hour. She brought her medical equipment and ran test after test while Villani lay on the couch, pale and exhausted. Tejo paced the room, his worry growing with each passing minute. Finally, Hana looked up from her scanner. Her face held an expression that Tejo could not read. He asked, "Is she sick? Is it serious?" Hana slowly shook her head. Then a smile spread across her face. "She's not sick, Tejo." "Then what? She's pregnant." The word hung in the air like a held breath. Villani's hand flew to her stomach. Her violet eyes went wide. "That cannot be." "The tests. My whole life," every healer said. "They were wrong." Hana knelt beside her. "I told you before, your body was never broken. It was just waiting for the right match." And now, she gestured at the scanner, which showed a tiny heartbeat flickering like a small star. "Now there is new life growing inside you." Villani stared at the image. A sound escaped her lips, half sob, half laugh. Tears streamed down her silver face, but she was smiling. Smiling like the sun breaking through clouds after a long storm. Tejo dropped to his knees beside her. He took her hands in his and kissed them. "We made this," she whispered. "You and I, we made life." "We did," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. She pulled him into her arms and held him tight. Her whole body shook with joy she had never dared to imagine. The news reached Emperor Morith within hours. He arrived at their quarters personally, something unheard of for Lunari royalty. When Villani showed him the medical scans, the ancient emperor fell to his knees. His crystal crown tipped from his head and clattered to the floor. He did not pick it up. "My daughter," he breathed, "my precious child. All these years I failed you. I let them call you cursed. I let them break your spirit." He looked up at her with tears in his pale eyes. "Forgive me." Villani knelt before him and took his hands. "There is nothing to forgive, Father. You were trapped by the same lies as everyone else. The lies end today." The emperor rose and turned to Tejo. "You have given my people hope. You have given my daughter joy. I do not have words to express my gratitude." Tejo bowed his head. "I did not do this for reward, Your Majesty. I did it because I love her." The emperor studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled, a genuine smile that softened his ancient features. "I can see that. And that is why you are worthy of her." Word of the pregnancy spread across the station, then across the communication networks, then across the galaxy. Lunari citizens, who had not smiled in decades, wept with hope. Human news channels spoke of the miracle that might unite two species forever, but not everyone. Celebrated. In the shadows of the Lunari delegation, Lord Kassan watched the celebrations with cold fury. He was a powerful noble, second only to the emperor in influence. He had spent his entire life upholding Lunari traditions, pure blood, ancient customs, the superiority of their kind. Now a human had done what 7 Lunari nobles could not. Now a half-breed child would inherit the throne. Now everything Kosan believed in was crumbling. He gathered his loyal followers in a private chamber. "This abomination cannot be allowed," he said, his voice sharp as ice. "A human's offspring on the Lunari throne? It would be the end of our civilization." "But the people rejoice," one follower protested. "They see the child as salvation." "The people are fools, blinded by desperation." Kaysen's pale eyes narrowed. "True Lunari know what must be done. The half-breed must never be born." Meanwhile, Hana requested a formal audience with Emperor Morath. She presented her full research on Lunari, fertility, every analysis, every conclusion. "The problem is not with your females," she explained, displaying her data before the Emperor and his council. "It never was. Over thousands of years, Lunari male biology has changed. They no longer produce the hormonal compounds necessary to trigger conception. Your species blamed women for a failure that belonged to men." The council chamber fell silent. Hana could feel the weight of ancient beliefs pressing against her words. "This is impossible," one elder protested. "Our traditions clearly state your traditions are wrong." Hana stood firm. "Science does not care about tradition. The facts are clear. If your species wishes to survive, you must accept help from humans. Whether through direct partnership or through synthesized treatments based on human biology." Emperor Morath studied the data for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "For too long, we have clung to pride while our children vanished. For too long, we have blamed our daughters for our own failures." He looked at Hana with respect. "You have given us truth. Painful truth. But truth, nonetheless." Not everyone in the council agreed. Kaysen's faction grumbled and whispered. They had built their power on the old beliefs. If those beliefs fell, so would they. That night, Kosan met secretly with his most trusted agent. "The human and the princess will be invited to the homeworld soon," Kosan said. "The emperor wants to formally recognize the child as heir. We cannot allow them to reach the throne room." "What do you command, my lord?" Kosan's face was as cold as deep space. "I command that the half-breed never takes its first breath. Arrange accidents, poison, sabotage, whatever is necessary. And the human. Dispose of him as well. Make it look like tragedy." Kosan turned toward the window, watching the stars he believed his pure-blooded ancestors had once ruled. "The Lunary Empire will not fall to contaminated blood. Not while I still live." He pressed a button on his communicator and sent an encrypted message to allies on the homeworld. The message was simple. The half-breed must never be born. Far away. In their quiet quarters, Teho and Villani knew nothing of these plots. Villani rested with her head on Teho's lap while he gently stroked her silver hair. Her hand lay on her stomach, feeling the first faint movements of the life within. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly. "A little," he admitted. "I never thought I would be a father. I don't know if I'll be good at it." "You will be." She looked up at him with certainty. "Because you have already shown me what a good heart looks like. Our child will learn love from you." Teho bent down and kissed her. Outside their door, the galaxy turned with all its dangers and hopes. Enemies plotted in the shadows. History waited to be written, but inside that room there was only warmth, only love. Only the quiet miracle of 2 hearts beating as one soon to become 3. They did not know that the hardest trials were yet to come. The Lunari. Warship cut through space like a blade through dark water. Inside, Villani stood at a viewing window, watching the stars slip past. Her pregnancy had grown visible now, a gentle curve beneath her flowing robes. Teho stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on her back. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "I have not seen my homeworld in many years. I left as a failure. Now I return as something else." "A hero," Teho said. "A symbol of hope. I do not feel like a hero."
Oh.
She turned to look at him. "I feel like a woman who got lucky. Lucky to find you." Hana approached them, a tablet in her hands. She had been granted passage as Villani's medical attach. We should arrive at the Lunari homeworld in 3 days. The Emperor has arranged a grand ceremony. The child will be formally recognized as heir to the throne. Villani nodded, but Tejo noticed the worry in her eyes. That night, they ate dinner in their private cabin. The food was Lunari cuisine, delicate flavors and strange textures that Tejo was still getting used to. He had just taken his first bite when Villani's face went pale. "Oh. Something is wrong," she whispered. Her hand went to her throat. "I cannot breathe." Tejo knocked the food away from her and shouted for help. Hana arrived moments later, her scanner already in hand. "Poison," Hana said grimly. "A compound toxic to Lunari pregnancies. Someone put it in her food." They rushed Villani to the medical bay. Hana worked through the night, synthesizing treatments and monitoring vital signs. By morning, both Villani and the baby were stable, but only barely. "This was not an accident," Tejo said, his voice hard. "Someone tried to kill her." "And the baby," Hana added. "The poison was specifically designed to end pregnancies. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." Tejo's hands curled into fists. "Who has access to our food supplies?" They investigated quietly, not wanting to alert the attacker. But they found nothing concrete, unleashed shadows and suspicions. 2 days later, a second attack came. Tejo woke in the middle of the night to a strange hissing sound. His engineer's instincts kicked in immediately. He recognized that sound it was gas leaking into the room. He grabbed Villani and pulled her toward the door. But the door would not open. Someone had sealed it from outside. The gas was filling the room fast. Villani stumbled, her eyes growing heavy. "Stay with me," Tejo said. He looked around desperately. His eyes fell on an air vent near the ceiling. He grabbed a chair, climbed up, and used his engineering tools to pry the vent cover loose. Fresh air rushed in, but that was not enough. They needed to get out. Tejo examined the door control panel. Someone had disabled it electronically, but physical systems still existed beneath the circuits. He pulled open the panel and found the manual release mechanism, mechanical lever buried beneath wires. He pulled it hard. The door slid open. Guards rushed in, alerted by the noise. Hana arrived moments later and helped Villani breathe clean air. "Twice now," Tejo said to the ship's captain. "Twice someone has tried to kill the princess and our child. If this happens again, I will hold you personally responsible." The captain bowed deeply. "We will increase security immediately. I swear on my honor." But Tejo knew that security was not enough. Not when the enemy wore the same uniform as their protectors. He spent the final day of the journey watching, listening, noticing which crew members avoided eye contact, which nobles whispered in corners, which servants seemed too interested in Villani's movements, and he noticed. Lord Kozan. The old noble moved through the ship like a ghost. He never approached them directly, but he was always nearby, always watching. His pale eyes held a cold hatred that sent chills down Tejo's spine. When they finally arrived at the Lunari homeworld, Villani insisted on attending the grand ceremony despite the dangers. She dressed in royal robes of deep silver and allowed attendants to braid crystals into her hair. "You should rest," Tejo said. "I have rested enough." She took his hand. "My people need to see me. They need to see us. They need to know that hope is real." The throne room was vast and ancient. Thousands of Lunari citizens had gathered to witness the historic moment. Emperor Moreth sat upon a throne of pale crystal, his face filled with pride as his daughter entered. The ceremony began. Priests spoke ancient words. Sacred flames were lit, and then, just as Emperor Morath rose to formally name the unborn child as heir, "I object." Lord Kasan stepped forward. His voice echoed through the hall like a crack of thunder. "This ceremony is a disgrace," Kosan declared. "A half-breed child cannot inherit the throne. A human has no place in our sacred bloodline. Princess Villani has betrayed everything our ancestors built." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emperor Morif's face darkened with anger. "Forget yourself, Lord Kasan. This decision is mine to make." "Then you have made the wrong one." Kosan turned to the crowd. Our species is dying, yes? But better to die pure than to survive contaminated. Better to fade into history than to become slaves to human blood. Something snapped inside Villani. She stepped forward, her violet eyes blazing with fire that had been buried for too long. When she spoke, her voice rang clear and strong. For years I believed what people like you told me. I believed I was broken, defective, worthless. She looked directly at Kosan. But I was wrong. And so were you, she gestured to Hana, who stepped forward with her research data. The truth is that lunar females were never the problem. It was the males. You're males. Your bodies no longer produce what is needed for conception. For thousands of years, you blamed your daughters and sisters and mothers for your own failure. Murmurs spread through the crowd as human Villani pointed at Tahoe. Gave me what no Lunari male could. Not just a child, but respect, kindness, love. Things that your precious traditions seem to have forgotten. Kaysen's face twisted with rage. Enough of this. He raised his hand. At that signal, a dozen guards drew weapons and moved toward Villani and Teho. Kosan, what is the meaning of this? Emperor Morith shouted. Change of leadership, Kosan said coldly. Something that should have happened long ago. Chaos erupted. Loyalist guards clashed with Kaysen's followers. Shouts and the sounds of weapons filled the throne room. Teho grabbed Villani and pulled her behind a pillar. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his hands and his determination. When a rebel guard charged at them, Teho met him with an engineering tool he had kept in his belt, heavy wrench that served well enough as a weapon. He fought. Not with skill, but with desperation. With love. He would not let anyone touch her. The battle lasted only minutes. Imperial guards overwhelmed Kaysen's forces. The old lord was seized and bound, but the damage was done. Villani clutched her stomach, her face twisted in pain. Something is wrong, she gasped. The baby Hana rushed to her side. Her scanner showed the worst. The stress has triggered early labor. We need to get her to a medical facility now. Toho lifted Villani in his arms and ran. Behind him, the throne room burned with the ashes of an old world, and within Villani, a new world fought to be born. The medical wing of the Imperial Palace was filled with noise and fear. Healers rushed past each other, their silver robes flowing like water. Machines beeped and hummed, and above it all, Villani's cries of pain echoed through the sterile halls. Teho stood beside her bed, holding her hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had never felt so helpless in his life. He could fix machines. He could solve problems. But this watching the woman he loved struggle to bring their child into the world, this was beyond his skills. You're doing great, he said, though his voice shook. Just keep breathing. I'm right here. Villani's face was pale, her silver skin damp with sweat. The early labor had been dangerous. The baby was coming too soon, and no one knew if both of them would survive. Hannah worked alongside the Lunari healers, bridging the gap between human and alien medicine. She monitored vital signs, adjusted treatments, and refused to let fear show on her face. The baby is small, a Lunari healer said, her voice tense, but the heartbeat is strong. We must deliver now. Waiting any longer will risk both their lives. And do it, Teho said. The next hour was the longest of his life, Villani screamed. She cried. She gripped Teho's hand until he thought the bones would break. But she did not give up. Through every wave of pain, through every moment of terror, she kept fighting because she was not broken. She had never been broken, and she would prove it one final time. At last, a different kind of cry filled the room. High and thin and beautiful. The healer lifted a small form into the air. A girl, she announced, her voice thick with emotion. A healthy girl. Villani collapsed back onto the bed, tears streaming down her face. Teho leaned over her, pressing his forehead to hers, weeping with relief and joy. The healer placed the baby in Villani's arms. She was tiny, smaller than any Lunari newborn the healers had ever seen. Her skin was a soft shade of silver, lighter than her mother's, Her head was covered with fine silver hair, but when she opened her eyes, they were brown. Warm and brown and full of human fire.
Yes.
She has your eyes, Villani whispered to Te-Ho. He reached down and touched his daughter's cheek. She was so small, so fragile, so perfect. What will we name her? He asked. Villani smiled through her tears. I want to give her a human name. A name from your homeland. Te-Ho thought for a moment. Then he smiled too. Yuna, he said. It means to flow gracefully, like a river that connects to lands. Yuna Villani tested the word on her tongue. It is beautiful, just like her. News of the birth spread across the planet within minutes. For the first time in over 100 years, a royal child had been born. Citizens gathered in the streets, weeping and cheering. Bells that had been silent for generations rang out across the ancient cities. Emperor Moreth entered the medical wing slowly. He had aged in the past days. The stress of the coup attempt and his daughter's difficult labor had taken their toll. But when he saw Villani holding baby Yuna, the years seemed to fall away. He knelt beside the bed and gazed upon his granddaughter. I never thought I would see this day, he said quietly. I had accepted that our bloodline would end with me, that I would be the last emperor of a dying people. He looked up at Villani, then at Te-Ho. You have proven me wrong. You have given us a future. He reached out and touched Yuna's tiny hand. Her fingers curled around his, and the emperor laughed a genuine, joyful laugh that no one had heard from him in decades. She has strength, he said. She will need it. The galaxy will not be kind to a child of two worlds. She will not face it alone, Te-Ho said firmly. I will protect her with my life. The emperor studied him for a long moment. Then he rose and placed his hand on Te-Ho's shoulder. No, you will. And that is why I am making you part of our family, not as a consort, but as a prince. You have earned your place, not through birth, but through courage and love. Those are the truest royal virtues. Te-Ho bowed his head. I am honored, Your Majesty.
No, the emperor said.
I am the one who is honored. To have you as a son? The following weeks brought rapid change. Lord. Kosin was tried before the imperial court. His crimes were made public, the poisoning, the sabotage, the assassination attempts, the coup. He was stripped of all titles and sentenced to exile in the cold outer moons of the empire. He would spend the rest of his days in darkness. Far from the power he had craved, his followers were scattered. Some were punished. Others, seeing the truth of their failure, renounced their old beliefs and pledged loyalty to the new order. Hana's research was published across all Lunari territories. The truth about male fertility spread like wildfire. At first, there was denial, then anger, then, slowly, acceptance. The old beliefs had been wrong. Change was not just possible, it was necessary. Human diplomats arrived to begin formal alliance negotiations. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were planned. For the first time in history, humans and Lunari began to see each other not as strangers, but as partners. And at the center of it all was Hana's fertility program. Using data from Villani's pregnancy, she developed treatments that could help Lunari females conceive, either through partnerships with humans or through synthesized compounds based on human biology. Within the first year, dozens of pregnancies were announced. Within 5 years, thousands. The nurseries that had stood empty for so long were filled with laughter again. 6 months after Yuna's birth, a great ceremony was held in the throne room, the same room where Kasan had tried to destroy everything. But now it was filled with light and music and hope. Emperor Moreth stood before his people and made a historic announcement. I am growing old, he said. My body is tired and my time grows short. But my heart is full, because I know that the future of our people is secure. He turned to Villani, who stood beside him in a crown of silver crystals. Te-Ho stood next to her, holding baby Yuna in his arms. I name Princess Villani as Empress-in-Waiting. When I am gone, she will lead our people into a new era. And beside her will stand Prince Te-Ho, who taught us that strength is not found in purity of blood, but in the warmth of the heart. The crowd erupted in cheers that evening. After the ceremonies were over and the crowds had gone home, Tejo and Villani stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The twin moons of the Lunari homeworld hung low in the violet sky. Baby Yuna slept peacefully in Tejo's arms. "I never imagined this life," Villani said softly. "When they sent me to the human outpost, I thought it was the end. The final humiliation before I faded into nothing, and now?" Tejo asked. She looked at him, at his simple face, his kind eyes, his ordinary human features that had somehow become the most beautiful thing in her universe. "Now I know that endings can become beginnings." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "They said I was cursed." Tejo kissed her forehead. "They were wrong. You told me that once before. On our first night together, and I'll keep telling you," he said. "Every day, until you never doubt it again." Out stirred in his arms, making a small sound. They both looked down at her, their miracle, their hope, their bridge between two worlds. Villani touched her daughter's silver hair. "Do you think she will be happy?" Tejo smiled. "She has a mother who survived everything life could throw at her. She has a grandfather who learned to change. She has an entire galaxy waiting to meet her." He looked up at the stars. "She has a father who will love her until the universe itself grows old." He held Yuna a little closer. "Yeah, I think she'll be just fine." Villani smiled and closed her eyes, letting the peace of the moment wash over her, far away. Ships carried news of the new alliance to distant worlds. History was being written. But here, on this quiet balcony, there was only a family, a human father, a lunary mother, a child of two worlds, and a love that had proven stronger than tradition, stronger than hate, stronger than the cold emptiness between the stars. The story was just beginning.